Everyone needs to watch out because it appears the Portal King is Portal Kinging again. Those two commitments, plus a player coming back and a high school player to watch. This is the Locked On Ole Miss podcast.
You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hi, I'm Stephen Willis, and I'm likely the only person that you're going to hear from today that has had an office in the Manning Center at Ole Miss and worked in the national media for Yahoo Sports. Thank you for joining us. Also had a little stint at Nashville at WSMV as well. Today on the show, we talk about another amazing weekend around Ole Miss football and talk about some of the stuff happening to that team, players coming in, players sticking around. There's a couple of storylines that we want to look at as well. As I mentioned, I'm Stephen Willis, and this is the Locked On Ole Miss podcast, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. We're free and available on all podcast apps and on YouTube. Thanks for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day, and a special hello to the everydayers that make the show what it is. Today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Go to prizepicks.com/lockedon and use code LOCKEDONCollege for a first deposit match up to $100. Daily fantasy sports made easy. Big weekend for Ole Miss. The number one transfer portal linebacker is coming to Ole Miss. One of the best cover corners is coming to Ole Miss. And that is kind of what we're expecting in this era of the transfer portal as we sit. Chris Paul, the linebacker from the University of Arkansas, has committed to the Ole Miss Rebels. He was the first one. He was the ringleader of the whole thing. He got the ball going as well. And Ole Miss also got a commitment from Taz Nicholson, Tavion, if you need to look him up. He also committed to Ole Miss as well. The funny thing about Taz is nobody can be really sure when he visited, but with this picture right here, it's obvious that he did. It just kind of lets you know that in the transfer portal, it's not as cut and dry and knowing everything that's going on. And sometimes you can get information in weird areas. Like me, for instance, I don't normally break stories, but for 48 hours, I was standing on a ledge by myself talking about Princely. You mind me yelling, and like I said, I butcher that name all the time, talking about that over and over again. For 48 hours, I was the only one talking about that. All of a sudden, more people are starting to pick that up as well. That's a name to watch. Ole Miss, they're dealing with other players as well. The Portal King is really going. Ole Miss is big game hunting, obviously, this transfer portal season. Is Ole Miss going to sign all these? No, they're not. The offensive lineman for Notre Dame that was supposed to come to Ole Miss after his NC State visit, committed to NC State. So he's probably not coming to Ole Miss after that. But interior offensive line-wise, they're going down the list, trying to get people on campus to make themselves a little bit better. We'll see how that goes. Now, those two commitments, Taz Nicholson and Chris Paul, an unbelievable use. Chris Paul is the number one transfer portal linebacker. I would equate him personally as a Jeremiah Jean-Baptiste plus type player. So whenever Ole Miss recruited Jeremiah Jean-Baptiste, they knew exactly what he was getting. He played a whole lot of time. He was kind of the thumper on that defense, but he might not have the foot speed or something like that. He wasn't quite there. Chris Paul has a little bit more of everything. He's a little bit over 6 foot. He's about 235 pounds. He can run sideline to sideline. He can get everybody lined up. I'm looking forward to seeing what's going to happen there. If you look at the linebacker position now, you have Chris Paul is going to lead a unit that has TJ Dudley, who will be eligible next season. You have Santarin Perkins, who is going to be a star, and he might end up playing that hybrid type role depending on how he gains weight this season. He might end up being basically a box safety type player. So we need to pay attention to that as well. But, players like Kari Coleman, those guys, what are they going to do? But Ole Miss's linebacker room is currently being completely rebuilt. So that leaves the back part of the defense. That's important. And they get Taz Nicholson. That's a like-for-like replacement for either DeAndre Prince or Zamari Walton. I do not think they're done on that side of the ball. And anybody that knows for sure that Taz Nicholson is going to be the guy doesn't really have a working knowledge of the Pete Golding defense, because Pete Golding is going to go find cornerbacks, and if they can't run, they're going to move them to safety. That's what they did with John Saunders. That's what they did with Deshaun Gaddy, playing on the inside a little bit. So position-wise, you're going to wait and have to see spring practice for where this player kind of lines up and kind of ends up. But you can see that they've worked on the defensive line, and there's players that are still available. Ole Miss is big game hunting on the defensive line right now. Princely and Walter Nolan are probably their two top targets on the defensive line. There's others, I'm sure, but those are the two names that people are talking about. And with Princely, the rumor is, Ole Miss is probably in the top two for his service. You'd have to think that Ole Miss is going to get a visit. And it's a situation where my people that I was talking to down here that kind of fed me that information and like perked my radar up. He's like, hey, Princely's changed representation, and information on the Florida side is going to be a little bit difficult. So apparently that relationship has completely broken up. I wouldn't expect him to go back to Florida at all. But Princely's the top pass rusher in the portal. We got Walter Nolan, who's the top player in the portal. And then you have these two players, okay? Ole Miss got a visit from Juice Wells, and there's him with Juice Kiffin and Lane Kiffin. And Jackson Dart actually took that photo. If anybody wants to ask, is Jackson Dart coming back? I haven't seen an infographic that Jackson Dart is coming back. Jackson Dart is essentially, as a quarterback, the one that closed the deal with Deion Smith and got that done. And now he is taking that picture on this visit with Juice Wells. He is doing way too much recruiting to not be a factor on this team moving forward. So I would expect Jackson Dart to be back, and don't, the sky is falling Chicken Little type stuff there. There's other stuff that's going on, but he's acting like somebody that is potentially going to be back. Juice Wells started his career, I think, at James Madison. He went to South Carolina, kind of tore it up this year. He wasn't quite the same player. He was injured a little bit, and now he's going to transfer out as a graduate transfer for 1 year. And we always talking about he's looking to win. Everybody hates losing more than anything. They hate it. They despise it. And if you can hook him up NIL-wise, if you can win a little bit with Ole Miss being in the conversation for the playoff, and you're going to have Jordan Watkins back, which we're going to talk about next segment, the Ole Miss wide receiver unit, if they can land Juice Wells, has a chance to be elite. It has a chance to be top-notch. And everybody's going to say, well, what about the depth? They don't play people. I don't think it's a depth type situation. I just don't think they play a lot of people. It's happened year after year after year when Ole Miss has had different types of wide receiver rooms. It comes down to the fact that because of the tempo they run and the way they operate, not a lot of players are going to get snaps at the wide receiver position. They're just not. It's not an indictment on depth. It's just, these are kind of our guys. These are our starters. And being a starter for Ole Miss is probably better than being a starter at most other schools nationally. Juice Wells could come to Ole Miss, and all of a sudden, he could be the guy that is getting 75 carries a game, or 75 plays a game, I should say, and being targeted multiple times. There's a lot of Elijah Moore in Juice Wells' game. A lot of Elijah Moore. He's an explosive type player. You have Jordan Watkins, which they kind of do that dual slot type situation to begin with. They did that with Dayton Wade and Jordan Watkins this year. What if that turns out to be Juice Wells and Jordan Watkins next year? The offense is going to get a little bit better. I like Dayton Wade. I think he's a fantastic player. I think Juice Wells is probably a higher ceiling athlete than Dayton Wade. It just is what it is. Caden Prieskorn becomes an unknown situation. We're going to talk about that in just a second. Now, the last thing we want to talk about, another visit, was Carter Smith. The offensive lineman from Indiana visited. He's a redshirt freshman. Now, this is what you need to know about Carter Smith. He left Ole Miss to immediately go to Tallahassee for his official visit there. Carter is handling this in an incredibly mature way, and I think he has already visited Ohio State. And this is important. If I'm not mistaken, Carter is from Ohio, and that could be a dream school type offer, but he didn't commit on the offer. He went to Ole Miss for an official visit. He's going to Tallahassee, and then after that, he is going to decide. So as far as an offensive line, if you want an offensive lineman, the next 5 days are going to be important for Ole Miss fans. Just is. So Carter Smith has a chance to improve that. Ole Miss has had a couple of visits from interior offensive linemen, and it could be very, very important indeed. It's a lot of stuff that Ole Miss fans can look forward to. The one thing that we know for sure is Lane Kiffin, in the first weekend after the portal opened, had on campus the top linebacker in the portal, the top wide receiver in the portal, one of the top offensive linemen in the portal. It just good players everywhere. And Ole Miss is doing what they can to make their roster better. And Lane Kiffin is doing a pretty fantastic job at roster building as well. Anyway, thanks for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. We're just getting started. Jordan Watkins is coming back to school. What does that mean for Ole Miss, and what will that wide receiver room look like in 2024? Passion, drive, and patience, what brings home the winning trophy, is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more, whether into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay's Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every single time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay's Guaranteed Fit is only available to U.S. customers. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every single league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. Jordan Watkins is coming back to school, and that's actually a pretty major deal. You're looking at a wide receiver room that has a chance to be increasingly special over the coming weeks. I mean, it's just going to get better and better and better, honestly. And when you look at the commitment of Jordan Watkins, who committed with these in the same vein that A.J. Brown did, like in 2017 or 2018, I'm not going anywhere. The Wolf of Wall Street thing, that was pretty fantastic. Jordan Watkins was the heart and soul of the wide receiver unit in 2023. Just was. And if you look, the fact that he broke his hand, they figured out a way to make it work. He got back there, didn't miss a game, and was returning punts with a broken hand. This is a guy that has done everything that we could have possibly wanted and asked for at the wide receiver position. As transactional as college sports has become, and how much players, for lack of a better word, mercenaries, Jordan Watkins has laid it all on the line for Ole Miss football. And because of that, he deserves a special place in Ole Miss fans' heart. But his return gives Ole Miss a slot receiver at a plus type position. So we talk about this getting really kicked off, and we're not going to count the actual previous signees, okay? So I understand this wide receiver room is a little bit bigger, and I'm going to leave off some names here. But these are some important names that Ole Miss fans need to watch for in the 2024 receiving class. Number one, Jordan Watkins. Number one potential slot receiver in the Southeastern Conference. Juice Wells coming in might have something to say about that, but you could have competition at that position. But Jordan Watkins comes back, gives Jackson Dart a security blanket. That is what Jordan Watkins became at the end of the year. Whenever there was a big throw, they figured out a way to get the ball to Jordan Watkins. Big catches made all season long by Jordan Watkins. Absolutely major role. Deion Smith from Holmes Community College committed to Ole Miss. Deion Smith is probably going to be one of the more talented receivers in the Southeastern Conference day one. And he's somebody to look for even out on the outside. You can play him slot. But what you're going to see is positional versatility. You heard me talk about that in the preseason this year. This is going to be a much more utilized thing in the future because of what they all can do. Tre Harris played all three wide receiving positions this year because of injury and other stuff, but that experience is going to mean that Ole Miss can use him in different ways. Deion Smith provides that same versatility. Jordan Watkins can play inside and outside. It's not going to be a situation necessary that that Tre Harris is always going to be on the right. Deion Smith is always going to be on the left. Jordan Watkins is always going to be on one of the slots. And you can just predict that all the time. The positional versatility will be huge. Now you have Caden Lee, you have Aiden Williams, you have Braylon Brown, you have JJ Henry. He's still hanging around as well as people that will make that room a little bit deeper. But the important cog that is coming left, there's two pieces that Ole Miss really needs in the near future, and that is Tre Harris, first of all. And like I said, I have it on pretty good authority that Tre Harris is about 70% coming back. So we're not at the point where we can count on Tre Harris coming back, but we're probably at the point where we can assume that he's going to come back. Now, there's a chance he could go get paid, and nobody's going to blame anybody for getting paid. But it's a situation to where I think Tre really likes at Ole Miss. Ole Miss really utilizes him, and the Texas A&M game that Tre had this year kind of lets him know, is like, this is what I can do full time. This is how I can handle this full time. And Tre Harris and Deion Smith on the outside with Jordan Watkins playing the slot receiver. I mean, that's a front three that's pretty fantastic. And another player that we're still waiting to hear from is Caden Prieskorn. Caden Prieskorn's a little bit of an older player. I think he has a kid. So he might decide to go to the NFL and get paid. He may decide, hey, one more year, since this year I started out missing the first quarter of the season and being injured. Maybe one healthy year could improve my draft stock, and to where that first contract is a little bit bigger than what it was. Because if he goes to the NFL right now, he's probably looking at a 5th or 6th or 7th round pick at best, potentially an undrafted free agent. And if that happens, honestly, you're probably better off staying in school, because maybe you can get into that 3rd or 4th round type situation. But if all of them come back, you're looking at an elite, absolutely elite wide receiver unit for Ole Miss in 2024. There's no getting around it. There's an unbelievably good ball player in Jordan Watkins coming back. But if you can get Tre Harris and Caden Prieskorn to follow him back. Now, I forgot the name of the player because I have brain surgery moment. I do apologize for that. But the tight end for Virginia Tech could be a possibility. But they're probably waiting to see what Caden Prieskorn's going to do on that, because you have Hudson Wolf, you have Javante Connor at the tight end position. I think the wide receiver and tight end positions are kind of where they want it to be. Remember, they don't play a lot of players. And I don't think they play a lot of players because they can't play a lot of players. They just don't play a lot of players. At this point, 3 years in, there's proof of concept in this. So if you're in the top 35, 40 players on the team, you're going to get a lot of game reps. It's just the way it is. It's probably the reason that all of this going on, and we're talking about all of this, State is actually recruiting Braylon Burnside to this, to the fact that, hey, you got Deion Smith, the JUCO Player of the Year. Jordan Watkins is coming back. Tre Harris is probably coming back. You have Aiden Williams on that campus. How many reps do you think you're going to get? I mean, I guarantee you 100% that is the recruiting pitch that Mississippi State gave Braylon Burnside. So we'll see exactly how that goes. I think Deion Smith, Jordan Watkins, Tre Harris, that would be a formidable threesome when Ole Miss gained over 700 yards, like 3 players this year. Jackson Dart taking a step. Caden Prieskorn, if he's healthy the whole time, I imagine that during this offseason, they're going to improve, and you're going to see a different Jackson Dart, even just like you did this year from his first year. That growth is going to be really, really big. And, you know, we haven't seen a year 3 Lane Kiffin quarterback. What does that look like? Should be interesting. But Jordan Watkins coming back to school, that is a ball roller. So we'll see exactly how that goes. The NIL collectives and the Grove collectives, they still probably have to work out deals with Jackson Dart, although he's recruiting like he's going to be around. Quinshon Judkins, they're going to have to work out something there, and Tre Harris. Those are Those are the three names left that I think the Grove Collective is having to work with as right alongside all of the work that they're doing right now in the transfer portal. This is a really, really big month for Ole Miss football. Still more to come on Locked On Ole Miss, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. AJ Maddox from Oak Grove just got crystal balled to Ole Miss by a national 24/7 analyst. What is Ole Miss getting from this young signal caller? We take a look as soon as we come back. But right now, I do want to let you know that Prize Picks is the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America. They're the easiest and most exciting way to play DFS. It's just you versus the numbers. Instead of battling thousands of other players, including pros and sharks, you pick more or less than a 2 to 6 player stat sheet and watch the winnings roll in. With basketball season here, you can now pick combo projections across football and basketball from the Specials League, a league created especially for combo projections that includes 2 or more players from different sports or league. For example, LeBron James plus Travis Kelce at a 10.5 combo of 3-point field goals made and receptions. Also, if you want to play alongside some of Prize Picks' favorite players like rapper Meek Mill and comedian Andrew Schultz, you can now find the community plays under the promo tab in the app to view entries from some of the biggest names in the Prize Picks community each week. Go to prizepicks.com/lockedon and use code LOCKEDONCollege for a first deposit match up to $100. Go to prizepicks.com/lockedoncollege and use code LOCKEDONCollege for a first deposit match up to $100. Daily fantasy sports made easy. Thanks for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen every day, and shout out to the everydayers. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day, along with local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering each and every league. For your second listen, go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 stream channel. Be part of history. So, heavy transfer portal in this weekend. Also, Jordan Watkins comes back. Those were major stories, but that wasn't the only stories. This was also a pretty huge official visit weekend for Ole Miss commits and a couple of players that weren't quite commits. There are a couple of high school players that we are going to be watching for. One is AJ Maddox from Oak Grove, and we're going to talk about him in just a second. The other is Kewan Lacey, who everything seems to be trending for Kewan Lacey to end up committing and signing to Ole Miss, perhaps as soon as this week. So we'll keep an eye on that as well and look exactly what's going on. But AJ Maddox is a quarterback from Oak Grove High School, and this came in just today. This is a tweet from Brad Logan where he said, national analyst for 24/7 Sports, Steve Wiltfong, has put in a crystal ball for Anthony Maddox to flip from Texas A&M to Ole Miss. 3-star quarterback, okay? And everybody's going to say, well, why is Ole Miss taking this whenever you have Jackson Dart and you have Walker Howard and you have Austin Simmons? Why is Ole Miss taking another quarterback? Well, first of all, you need a quarterback every class. Just for real. In this age of the transfer portal, you need to take a quarterback. Second of all, this AJ Maddox, this Anthony Maddox, this quarterback from Oak Grove is kind of from a football family. His father played at Delta State, really good football player. And if you look at the highlights real quick, we'll look at that right now. You see a really raw quarterback, but really toolsy. Not necessarily somebody that is refined and exactly where you want him to be, but somebody where in 2 or 3 years, he has a chance to be a really good quarterback. I am not comparing him to Jaden Daniels, okay? Do not hear that. But stylistically, as far as him running and throwing the football, he's probably not as fast as Jaden, probably not as strong of an arm, but you see a little bit in his game doing that. And a lot of that comes from the fact they're going to run spread offenses all the time. So a lot of the quarterbacks look similarly. But this is a raw version of that. You see a quarterback that likes to pound the ball down the field, much like Jackson Dart does. You see a quarterback that has the mobility to make defenses pay whenever they decide, hey, we're going to get in there and just try and muck everything up in their run game and in the short pass game. the quarterback with the legs can end up opening you up real similarly to Jackson Dart. Maybe the comp is a less polished Jackson Dart, but AJ Maddox has a chance to be really good. And I wanted to say this because he deserves a scholarship look from Ole Miss. If he gets a scholarship, he has earned that scholarship. Now, I'm going to talk about ancillary benefits now. Benefits that are kind of on the side. His brother is a future five-star defensive lineman at Oak Grove High School. He's a sophomore. He is somebody that is going to be recruited by everybody. And that means if you are a good three-star player with the talent that deserves to be there, you're going to get the benefit of the doubt more than other people are, because you have a chance to get a Denzel Kimdichie for a Robert Kimdichie type player. Good player. He has a chance to be somebody that contributes at the Ole Miss level. But there's a reason that he was committed to Texas A&M. There's a reason that all of this is going on, that maybe Ole Miss didn't focus all their attention on there whenever, Damon Williams or the kid from Florida was committed, because the benefit of the doubt wasn't there yet. Now the benefit of the doubt is the kid visited officially Ole Miss after canceling a visit to Mississippi State, and now they're talking about he's a genuine flip candidate. Good football player, real good football player. Like I said, if you look at him, he drives the ball downfield. He has a really good arm. He has a really good presence, and he looks stylistically like Jaden Daniels playing quarterback. Not saying he's a fast, not saying he's a strong an arm player. I'm saying stylistically they look similar. So we'll see exactly how that goes. He won a 7A state championship at Mississippi and at Ole Miss. They won a couple of weeks ago. I can't believe that Ole Miss or Mississippi has a 7A at this point. Florida has a 7A, and they have 10 times the population of Ole Miss of Mississippi. It's ridiculous. So that's absolutely crazy. But a really big potential pickup at the quarterback position that we need to keep our eyes on over the next couple of days. The players that you probably need to watch over the next week: Juice Wells, see what he does; Carter Smith, see what he does; AJ Maddox, see what he does; and also Kewan Lacey. Pay attention to him as well. Those are probably the four names of recruits that Ole Miss fans need to pay attention to as well. Hey, my mother's in town, so videos for the next couple of days are a little bit weird, okay? Starting this week, though, honestly with Shark Tank Live, video coverage should be about the same. On Thursday, we're going to have our first of 3 crossovers with the Locked On Nittany Lion host, Zach Seiko. And we're going to be talking all about that bowl game and, stuff like that. Also, Thursday is my annual checkup, and I don't know what type of thinking you do, what type of praying, any of that stuff. Just keep me in your thoughts on that one. That's going to be a stressful day for me as well. But we're going to try and keep this as normal as possible through the bowl game after Tuesday. We have that checkup to get through on the 14th, but after that, to the bowl game, we should be pretty okay. But like I said, not looking for sympathy, just letting you know what's going on. Anyway, thanks for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. Everydayers, we get in that recruiting mindset with portal and high school recruiting this week. Which of these 4 players that we're paying attention to, they're going to commit? We're looking at about Walter Nolan. We're talking about all of that stuff. We're paying attention to what's going on, and we're going to start getting into the Peach Bowl as well with Zach Seiko as the week goes on as well. For your second listen, Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. For your second listen, go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 stream channel. For those of you on YouTube, we'll send you there right now. Hotty toddy.